Transparency is being restored to the White House, to Washington, D.C., as we've never seen before. And another promise is fulfilled by the Trump administration, the Trump White House.
I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
The White House today releasing phase one of the Jeffrey Epstein files to a handful of conservative influencers. Rogan O'Hanley, also known as DC Drano, received one of these binders. They got binders full of them, 3-ring binders, and wrote on X today saying, "Today I met with President Trump, VP J.D. Vance, AG Pam Bondi, and FBI Director Kash Patel in the Oval Office. They handed me a binder copy of the Epstein files. This is the most transparent administration in American history. The best part? This is just the start." Attorney General Bondi confirmed there are thousands more Epstein file documents being secretly held in the Southern District of New York, and they will be delivered to the Department of Justice in D.C. by February 28th. That's real soon. People will be going to jail for what they've done. Now, one person not particularly impressed with the rollout is Florida Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, and she wrote, "This is not what we or the American people asked for, and a complete disappointment. Get us the information we asked for," she said, very blunt. We're here with tonight's squad. Let's jump right in. And boy, lots of activity in town today, I've got to say.
It's a whirlwind.
And it is a whirlwind. And you're very much in the middle of it, aren't you, Chad? And,
I am a little bit.
And what do you have there? You have
this is the 3-ring binder. This is the phase one of the Epstein file. I was there with Rogan O'Hanley, DC Drano. I was there in the Oval Office. We were there for the meeting. We were not there for this. We weren't invited to the White House to receive this document. But I think in true form with the Trump administration of them trying to sidestep or maybe prove a point when it comes to the mainstream or legacy media, they are wanting to use influencers, and so AG Bondi decided to give us this, and of course we took it. We wanted it. I mean, if you're anything like all of us have done the research and the deep dives on Jeffrey Epstein, we're all curious. It's a mystery. It's a tragedy in American, culture, and so we were anxious to see what was inside the folder.
And do you have bullet points, highlights, what you found so far?
The most interesting thing to me is, I know everybody out there, they want a list of names. There's no list of names per se. You got to remember, billionaires are associated with a lot of people. And so there's Ghislaine Maxwell's Black Book. We've had the Black Book belonging to Jeffrey Epstein for a long time. There's a number of flight logs. There's a manifest in here of possessions that were taken from his apartment. There are redacted victim names, and particularly under the heading of masseuses. There are about 254 of those names, which is disgusting when you consider. But the most interesting thing we received was a letter from General Bondi to Kash Patel revealing that the FBI field office they sent like 200 documents, but there's thousands. And they didn't reveal that they had those thousands of documents. And so Kash Patel has demanded that by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, February 28th, that the FBI in New York will deliver the full and complete Epstein files, includes records, the documents, audio and video recordings.
Right.
So I think this is where we see the smoking gun. To me, this is not a smoking gun. I think it was a gesture in good faith on the part of the administration to say, we're going to start releasing information. We're going to give you what we have. And we can't give you what we don't have, and I think that's where some of the disappointment is coming in at this stage.
Well, and it's you were just citing here the Attorney General of the United States of America, Pam Bondi, today requesting that all of the Epstein files, not a selected portion, be handed over, writing in a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, and you were just citing a portion of this. AG Bondi said, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised by this new information. She followed it up by demanding that the records be turned over to her, saying, by 8 a.m. tomorrow, February 28th, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. She ended the letter by requesting an immediate investigation into why her original request was not fulfilled. And today, this is kind of an interesting development, too. Josh Steve, a senior communications official at the Department of Justice, resigned effective September 30th, citing his resignation is due to hostile and toxic work environment. Now, this is a guy who started there at the beginning of the Obama administration.
Really?
And he's been there ever since. And today he went out stamping his spiked heels, and he's leaving in a huff. But listen, she's the Attorney General. I think it's been abundantly clear that the FBI was supposed to have handed that stuff over. We're about a month in, and we're still playing these kabuki games with the FBI.
Right, and that's the big question. Why does the FBI field office in New York, why do they have so much power that they've decided they're going to withhold this information? We've seen these games played by the FBI when it comes to these field offices, for example, in Richmond, when they went after the Catholics who were going to Latin Mass and basically saying that they were a hate group. This is a huge problem that Kash Patel and General Bondi, they're going to have to tackle immediately. And I have to say, I think it's very important for Pam Bondi to set the expectation. I think to your point, Chad, there's so much hype around these Epstein files that they also have to be calm the nerves to basically say, look, we're going to have to do this step by step. Some of this is new. Some of this has been released already, because I think you're seeing in Congress a lot of even these Republican lawmakers saying, you know, this isn't enough, so disappointing, et cetera, which the reality is that who knows what we're really going to find in here.
Right.
And the SDNY is the Southern District of New York, the U.S. attorney, the prosecutor. And you just said, you used a magic word there, redactions, that there are names redacted. And they say, well, these are victims, they're masseuses, and that's going to cause all kinds of mayhem, too.
I think it will. And I know that this is a hot button topic. People feel very passionate about this. We don't take it lightly. You know, even people say, well, they're influencers. I've often joked, you know, people will introduce you as an internet sensation, which is a 21st century way of saying you're unemployed, but you're popular, right? That's the attitude towards people who are podcasters or influencers, creators, if you will. At the end of the day, we saw with the president being elected, this was in many ways a podcast presidency. There were podcasters that reached millions upon millions of people every single day. And the president, his agenda is to put the mainstream media in their place effectively. One of the reasons, and the primary reason that I posted an image with this on social media is because I think it keeps up pressure on the administration to do what they said.
Right.
And let's make sure that they maintain the transparency, because for me, someone who's been a student of and a researcher for years of Epstein and his atrocities, this is the information that it's good. It's a good, like I said, it's good faith, but we need a lot more.
We need a lot more, and we're thousands, and they're in different cities, and the Southern District of New York, and the FBI, and redactions, and welcome to Washington.
Yeah, I'm particularly concerned about the redactions, and I think a similar thing is going to happen with the JFK, RFK, and MLK files, where the smoking gun, so to speak, that confirms the conspiracies surrounding those assassinations will probably be redacted. And so I always warn and caution people expecting there to be some huge bombshell that's not really how Washington works. And Chad, I was curious, you said in your first statement that that you actually did not go to the White House to get these documents.
No.
I find that really interesting. So the Attorney General just handed you this as a bonus?
You know, this is an interesting...
It's a farewell package.
This is a happy birthday. This is an interesting White House, right? This is an interesting White House. This is an interesting cabinet. My takeaway from the time there, both in the Roosevelt Room as well as the Oval Office, is there is a camaraderie there. I don't know if that's the right word, but there is a system in place where they seem to be working together. So we pretty much had a meeting with just about everyone in the cabinet, including Director Patel, and even Tom Homan was there for a moment. We went to have a meeting with Vice President Vance to talk about messaging for the administration. And we didn't really know what to expect. We certainly had a bonus with so many other people dropping in, including the president. And then we went into his office, and he spent time with us graciously. But I remind people that when they call this, obviously she said, you don't have to look at it now. Well, you can't tell us that. So people want to see what the inside of it looks like. You see the flight logs. It's going to take someone a lot smarter than me to decipher a lot of the abbreviations that are in there. And to your point, the redactions that we're talking about, they're still the names, but you just have telephone numbers that are hidden. Yeah. People say, well, Trump had long enough to scrub it. The Trumps are in Ghislaine Maxwell's black book. They did know one another. They were associates. But again, for me, I'm not interested in who he was associated with. I want to know who the clients were. So then when you get back here, as we referenced, the masseuses, here you see this. The significant thing about these pages, and I don't know that it shows up on the camera, but there's numbers. These numbers represent women, girls, young girls.
Underage,
Underage in many cases. And there's 254 listed here. There's 5 pages of covered names, obviously for the victims and their families. And this coming out, we have to remind everybody that with this coming out and the debate that goes around it, this unearths a lot of emotion of tragedy that happened in a lot of people in their families' lives. And so it's a somber thing. We're certainly not doing it for clicks. I want this administration to honor their word. I want them to come out with everything. I think the American people need to know it. I think this has been a huge mystery/conspiracy that has been kind of hovering over the nation as a dark cloud, and the fact that there's no arrests. And we said it during the election. Trump gets indicted 91 times and nobody's been arrested.
Right.
In the Maxwell/Epstein case.
Right, exactly.
Can I just say real quick that how it really happens in the White House is because it's such a small building, especially in the West Wing, that when they hear that the social media influencers are there, like the comm shop then calls over to the vice president's office and say, hey, these guys are here. And then the president finds out, and then the president's like, can we get them into the Oval Office? That's usually how it works in that case. So.
Now, Jason, I'm struck by the number of redactions. We got a lot of blacked out papers there.
Yeah, but I think Chad made a good point. Like, we have to protect victims, protect their identities. And I know it's frustrating for members of the media, but people are going to get aggressive. They're going to start going to these people, trying to contact them. And these people don't want to relive the horror that they experience. So I think protecting their identities, there are other things. And certainly, I think we should know, perhaps the client list, but people who are the victims or the masseuses and all that, I really don't have a problem with those kinds of redactions. And again, even with the client list, this is going to be tricky. As we saw, as you stated, Trump is in the black book. He, knows Ghislaine Maxwell. He actually wished her well, which was strange. But Epstein also was on tape saying Trump was my best friend for 10 years. So I'm not even saying that he was involved in any of that. I believe in the other 91 crimes, but not necessarily that one. But it may be tricky. And this is something even Trump said, in his interview with Fox News, where he was like, I don't know about releasing it right away because, you don't want to hurt someone else's reputation that may have been, associated or been a neighbor or something like that.
The audios and the videos might be very telling. I think that's what's going to be.
Well, and also I would think of the masseuses that were there as witnesses, too, that you might want to be available to document a lot of this from a journalistic standpoint and a legal standpoint. Phone numbers you can leave out.
But I think the law enforcement should have those names and should be able to contact those people, but not the media, I think.
Well, welcome to the Epstein documents. Chad Prather, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Really great that you could be here. Thanks a lot.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.